Hey guys, it's Ken from AnyMonkey, and today I'm going to do a quick tutorial on the very basics of doing roof drawing. The reason I'm doing this is because it seems that some people that have downloaded the app are just having a bit of a hard time struggling trying to get the drawing part of it done, and I guess the tutorial that I made for my first roof wasn't quite clear enough. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a step-by-step tutorial on a pretty basic roof here, so we can all get going and you can use the app to its full potential as far as the drawing part of the app goes. Okay, so I'm in the app. I'm in the guest area, the same as you would have access to once you've downloaded the app. And you can see that here's my projects that I've got started here for testing. So I'm going to select sloped roof number 1. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to click down at the bottom left hand side there at Draw Roof. Okay, once I've done that, the picture that I've already preloaded into this project is going to appear, and you can see it's quite a nice easy drawing. And so we're going to start this drawing here exactly as I would. And one thing I want to always mention, and I really want to stress this, is that when you're doing a drawing, you always want to try and do the drawing one shape at a time. Don't go off and draw your whole perimeter and then fill in the roof and things like that. The app just doesn't really respond very well when you're doing that. On an easy roof like this, it would probably work just fine. But once you start getting into more complicated roofs with overhangs and things, you'll find that if you're not following that rule, the app doesn't respond very well, and it becomes very difficult to correct your mistake. Once that starts happening, it's better to almost start again sometimes. So I just really want to stress that while you're doing your drawings, try and draw one shape at a time. So the very first thing we're going to do here is we're going to click on Draw Roof down at the bottom here, and you can see that in the video the Draw Roof button gets highlighted. And once I'm in that mode, when I put my right index finger, I'm right-handed, so I draw with my right. When I put my right index finger on the screen, this cursor shows up above my finger so that you can see exactly where it needs to be here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave that finger on the screen. I'm not going to lift it up at all. And I'm going to take my left thumb and I'm going to tap the screen. Once I've done that, I can slide my right index finger to the right and leave it on the screen. And then as soon as I get to this end point here, I'm going to tap my left thumb again, and then I can go off in another direction with my right index finger, and I tap again. And then as I get close to this final shape, part of my shape here, you see my cursor wants to snap to that end point, and the cursor grows to let you know that, hey, I'm there. So as soon as you get your cursor to be on that point like that, you tap again, and all those red lines now turn to yellow, letting you know that you've actually finished that shape correctly. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to continue drawing. I'm going to snap to this point here where the two hip intersections meet, and I'm going to tap again and start drawing my little ridge here, and I will keep my right index finger on the drawing at all times, tap again, move over here, tap again, down to this point, tap again, and then I'm going to finish this shape and tap, and it turns yellow to let me know that I've finished. And I'm just going to continue on one shape at a time, finishing this up. And the reason one shape at a time it's good to get used to it that way is because, you know, on a more difficult drawing, sometimes it's very hard to see when you're just filling in lines randomly. Oops! Now I missed there, so I actually moved my finger before I snapped to that line. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to select More, and there's a Delete Drawing, which I can delete all the lines. There's a Delete Lines. There's Details, which we don't need yet, and there's Waste Factor that we don't need yet. But what I need right now is Delete Lines, and I'm just going to touch that line that didn't finish for me. Then I'm going to go back and select Draw Roof again, because you have to be in draw mode in order to have this cursor come up. So I'm going to snap back to that line, and I'll try and be a bit more careful this time when I get to the finish here, and there we go. So I'm just going to continue going around, tapping each time that I want to end a point or start a point. And I use my thumb because what I do is I hold the app in my left hand, and my fingers are at the bottom of the iPad, and then I use my thumbs available. And you have to be very careful when you're drawing, when you're sliding your hand across. If let's say you're on your right hand, when you're sliding your right index finger across, if your pinky happened to touch the screen, then it thinks you've tapped the screen. So you have to be very careful. What I do is I actually kind of brace my index finger with my thumb, because your index finger does start to get a little sore in the beginning when you're doing your drawings. And you see, now that I've fooled around there, I've messed up that line. So I just deleted that line so I can start again. Again, click on Draw Roof, and I'm going to start. Yeah, so I brace my finger with my right thumb a little bit, just to give it a little more strength so it doesn't get tired. And again, I'm going to finish that shape. And here we go. I'm going to finish my drawing right now as far as the outline goes. So there's my drawing. If I go to here, back to here again to More, and I select Details, it's basically going to show you nothing, because I haven't added any kind of a scale to the drawing. I haven't told the drawing what are hips, what are eaves, what are anything. So right now, this drawing, all the details say 0. So what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to set our scale, and this is where the one measurement that you have to take on site comes in. And you can actually take this measurement from a lot of times from Google Earth or whatever, so that you have an idea of around what the size is going to be. And if if you have to, you can take that Google measurement, and it's usually quite accurate. I would say within about 2%. But sometimes you just want to get on site and make sure you have a proper measurement here. So what I would do if I was on site, if I was either on the ground or on this roof, this is a pretty walkable roof, so I could probably get up there and measure this one, is I would take the longest line that I can actually find on this roof, the longest horizontal line, which means either a ridge or an eave. And to be honest with you, it's much, much easier to pick out an eave, because generally speaking, when you're doing your drawing, the gutter helps you pinpoint exactly where your eaves are. So it's quite accurate when you do a drawing and you take an eave. So we're going to take the eave at the very bottom of this drawing, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to say select Set Scale, and then I'm going to touch my finger on that bottom line. And once I've done that, this little pop-up comes up and it says please enter a scale value. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to guess at this one here. I didn't actually measure this one myself, so I'm going to guess and say that eave across the back is 40 feet 6 inches. Now in this app, 6 inches is designated by 0.6. I know that in reality, in real math, it's different than 0.6. It's actually 4.5, because 4.5 feet is 4 feet 6 inches. But the way the app works is by going by points. If you had 4 foot 11 inches, so I'll back up and I'll say 11 inches, and you say OK, you can, if I zoom down now to this little spot, you'll see that it says 40 feet 11 inches. And that's what I've set my scale. As soon as I do that, you see all the other lines have filled in now with their measurements. And now these measurements obviously aren't sloped lines. They are lines as if you were looking straight down. Right now the drawing thinks that all of these measurements are as if you're looking straight down. They're all flat lines. These aren't going to change on here, but what's going to happen is if I add a slope to this roof, and then I select, let's say I select one of these hips as a 5/12 slope, it'll actually, when I go look at my details, that number will be higher. How I'm going to show that to you now is by this. What I'm going to do is I'm going to click on the slope button, and it gives me a wheel, and I'm going to say that this roof is a 5/12 roof, and I'm going to say OK, and then I'm going to say apply to all. I have two ways of doing this. I can either touch my finger on all the zeros individually, like I'm doing right now, or I can say apply to all, and it makes the entire roof a 5/12. Now let's go to this. I'm going to zoom down on this hip right here, and you can see that that measurement there is 21 foot 6 inches. So what we're going to do now is we're going to start identifying the different items on the roof, and just to show you my point, I'm going to identify a hip first. So I'm going to click identify button. I have another wheel, and I'm going to see a hip here. It's in green, And when I touch this line, that line is going to turn green. So now that I've done that, the program has taken that 21'6" line, and it has made it into, it's added the slope factor that I've already added there, the 512. So if I go into details and I look, you see the hip now is actually 22 feet 4 inches. So that's taken into account the 512 slope that I've added there. Okay, so every time I add slope to, every time I add a hip or a valley or a rake edge, it's going to add that 512 slope. Obviously, if I add an eave, it's not going to add any extra because an eave is flat, and a ridge, same with a ridge, it's not going to add any extra for a ridge either. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the identify button again, and I'm going to select all the hips that are on this roof here. So I'm just going to touch with my finger all the hips that are on the roof. Okay, so now that I've done that, I'm going to go identify, and let's say identify my eaves. So I'm going to click here, and when you have a real detailed, if you have a very small, like these ones aren't so bad, but if you have a really small area that you're having a hard time getting, what you can do is zoom in first, go identify, and then you can touch these lines right here, and then that will make it easier for you to identify your eaves. Okay, I've got 2 more to do, so I'm going to go identify eaves again and just click on these last 2. Then I'm going to go identify again, and I'm going to select my ridges. I've got a ridge there, and a ridge there, and a ridge there, and all I have left now is my valleys for this drawing. So I'm going to go identify and touch my valleys, and there we have my drawing pretty much finished. On this particular roof, there's a carousel in the front, and carousels usually are a little bit steeper than the actual sides of the roof. So I'm going to just say that these carousel areas are a 712. So I'm going to select slope, and I'm going to select 712. Come back to my drawing, and I'm going to touch those 3 areas of the carousel, and that's that. So now I've got, my drawing shows you all the areas that are 512, and then all the areas that are showing up as 712. And I'm going to push save. Once I do that, I can go back to my details. So I'll select more, and then I'm going to select details. And now you can see that I have a total area of 1,625.5 square feet, and I have my 512 area is 1,550.6 square feet, and my 712 area is 74.9 square feet. This works out really handy when you've got a big project and it's split up into different slopes. This thing will itemize it for you, and you can have as many as you want. If you have 10 different slopes on there, no problem. You can use 10 different slopes. It'll give you a report with all 10. And basically this is good for you because, generally roofers get paid by the slope that they're working on. And, if a 512 and a 712 might not be much of a difference, but if there was a 512 and a 1212, then the roofers would get paid a little bit more for that 1212 area, and this breaks it down nicely for you. Now, again, if I click on the More button, there's a waste factor here. And you can click on the waste factor button, and it asks you for a percentage between 1 and 15%. And on a roof like this, you might add maybe 4% waste, 5% waste. So I'm going to push it 5, and I'm going to say OK. And what that does now is it increases, if I go to details again, it increases all those numbers that I had there by 5%. So that's giving you all your waste factor for you. It tells you that there. And there's all your information. So I'm going to save this again. And then I'm going to go back, click on the very top button, back button, and I'm going to go to my Generate Report section. And this is the part that you can either email to somebody, you can sync it back to your server. Unfortunately, in the demo version, we don't have those options. We couldn't have people changing all of these things on the server because then every time someone downloaded it would be a mess. So we had to leave out those pieces of it. And what I want to do here is I want to click on Main Image, and I'm going to say Done, and I'm going to say Generate Report. And once I've generated the report, you can see it here. So here's the report. There's all my eaves, there's my waste factor, and there's my total. So you can see my length of eave is 163'7", and then my waste factor is 8'2", and my total is 171'10". and I go to the next page and there's some more totals. So this is a very nice report that you can email yourself, email your customer, email your colleagues, whoever it is. And so all I would simply do is touch this check mark and I would say email, and your email comes up and I can email this to whoever I like. So I'm going to cancel that because we're not going to email it right now. But ordinarily, beside the back button, there would be a sync button up there, and you would be able to sync this back to your server, so that way it's saved. Your report's saved. You can go back and look at this report anytime you want to, and it'll be saved as the date that you saved it. So if you happen to do it again, maybe 6 months from now or something, then you would have both reports there, one from the one you did in June and one for the one you did in maybe September or something like that. So that's it. So again, we'll go back to the sloped roof one, draw a roof. There's all of our details. Everything's there for us. It's pretty straightforward. There it is. So if you have any more questions, please do not hesitate to email me at ken@anymonkey.ca. You can visit our forum, our new forum that we just added to the website there, and please sign in, register, and you can drop a message, any bug reports that you might notice, or any thing on your wish list that you'd just like to have. One of the things we're going to be working on very shortly is creating some kind of like an icon toolbar where I can select a skylight, and I can touch a skylight, and then I can touch the area on the roof where there's a skylight, and it'll put a little skylight there, or a little chimney, or a plumbing stack, or a vent, or something like that. That way you have a complete drawing. Right now we're just focusing on the area takeoff, but eventually we're going to have a little toolbar set where you can start adding all the different roof hardware and things like that that are on there. Okay, great. Thanks very much, everybody, and I hope you have a great day.